Welcome to the Lonely Marketers podcast. This week, I'm talking to Chris Hawksey, Chief Revenue Officer at Smart Solutions Group. Chris started marketing events for clubs whilst at university and continued his journey on quite an unconventional path for a recruitment marketing career. He explains what being Chief Revenue Officer actually entails, how to not put marketing in a box, building relationships with key decision makers to drive revenue, and the power of human connection. One of the most important things we chat through is how to speak the language of your C-suite. Given that Chris has made it to the C-suite as Chief Revenue Officer, I feel like this is a really insightful episode talking through the journey of just where a career in recruitment marketing can take us all. Thanks for joining us today. I've been personally looking forward to this recording and chatting to you, just purely on the basis, obviously, a lot of experience in recruitment marketing roles, but then a career path that I see as exciting and interesting, on the basis that it's arguably something you would see in other sectors, but not what we see often as a career path as a recruitment marketer. So, marketing manager, I think, was your first job title as a recruitment marketer, and since then you've gone on to a head of growth role and then a global head of growth and marketing at different companies, and you are now currently Chief Revenue Officer. So just over to you, really. Talk us through that career path, because it's I wouldn't describe it as alien, but it's not the natural sequence of events that many in recruitment marketing jobs would see.
I'd say that recruitment's 5 or 6 years behind what the kind of tech industry, the kind of SaaS companies on the kind of west coast of the US, who I always kind of see are generally at the forefront of kind of marketing evolution and kind of business change, really. And I've always taken a lot of inspiration from those sort of businesses. I don't think there's loads of exciting and super interesting stuff that you get in recruitment which hasn't been done elsewhere. It's typically done by the other companies. So I'm just going to move my dog 1 second because he's now at the door and barking.
Yeah, no worries, mate. It was always a matter of time which dog would bark first.
I'll say so. I've always looked to the kind of that US tech scene as what I would say at the kind of vanguard of marketing evolution and generally how businesses operate. So I've always tried to take ideas and inspirations from them. I've tried to follow the quote unquote LinkedIn influencers, generally in SaaS companies, generally over on that kind of side of the US. I joined a company or a community called Pavilion, which you might be familiar with.
Yeah.
And that's mainly, so that is a community of marketing, sales, customer success, people generally US based, and 90% will be in tech or in SaaS. And that's where I try to get a lot of ideas and a lot of concepts and try to kind of replicate them in recruitment. And I think that I've then seen the kind of marketing role develop. And I'm sure we'll go into my history before I went into recruitment marketing.
Yeah.
But it's not really been very traditional in terms of I didn't go do a marketing degree, or I didn't really go into marketing as a marketing exec when I was, 21, 22, first out of uni.
So you were never on that traditional ladder as a starting point. So maybe the tunnel vision some of us have is because we've envisaged going down that route straight off the bat and not thought outside of that. What would I describe it as? That simple process.
Yeah, I would say the kind of traditional trajectory, marketing exec, marketing manager, head of marketing director, then hopefully onto a CMO. I never really saw that as my route. And that's 2 reasons. One, I don't think it's my skill set.
Okay.
And secondly, I just see the marketing role really developing from a traditionally, very brand led, to one which really influences revenue. So I go back to what I said about never really saw this as my skill set. So when I was at uni, when I was 19, 20, started a business, doing kind of events. So I was that really annoying club promoter. I used to go around, hand out flyers and trying to get you into...
What city? You might have influenced
Canterbury in Kent.
Oh, okay, no.
Yeah, from Manchester, went down to Canterbury. Yeah. So that was my job. And then I started doing these coach trips. So I was taking a bunch of students from Canterbury, which is a small kind of cathedral town, to London for a night out. Now, I never thought I was going to go into events forever. I don't think I've got the personality and all that sort of stuff. But what I did start to really enjoy is how you find a gap in the market. So there was no nightlife or a limited nightlife where I was from. Find a solution, go to London, really simply, and then try and package it up and sell it back to those people. So really, that was my first marketing role without really realizing it.
But and I learned much more around it by default, right?
Yeah. And what I was really good at was, again, finding a need and packaging it and selling it back to these people. Now, I was never like on the phone selling them. I was creating a brand and getting a series of what we would now call influencers, but reps.
Yeah.
And then that was then driving that forward. And then I did that for 5-6 years. And I think that's where I really thought, I'm quite good at this marketing stuff, but I'm never going to be super into the data. I'm never going to be particularly creative. So I always saw my role as one which was much more rounded, much more encapsulating different parts of how business operates. So my role right now is CRO, so Chief Revenue Officer, which typically is a bit of marketing, bit of sales, bit of customer success. Now,
that is very, like, speaking from my experience over the last year and a half working for a technology or working for a software company, that is very SaaS structure, isn't it? Like that kind of customer success. And our CEOs mentioned that on LinkedIn recently, should recruitment companies have customer success teams? Jump in on that, actually. What do you think about that? How does that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the term the job role I imagine has come from SaaS companies, or at least come from kind of that tech focused type of business. Now, there isn't quite the equivalent in recruitment because you don't typically have a customer success team. So the way I see it is, I see a sale in a recruitment agency. So you find let's say you've got a client, you find a candidate, you present that candidate to the client, so on and so forth, and you try and convince that candidate to take the job. And ultimately, you want to then, in the future, try and get that candidate re-engaged, or whenever they're looking for their next job, they come back to you.
Yeah.
So that's all one big journey, right? Now, in a typical recruitment agency, again, I'm going to say typical, you will have a marketing team, probably quite small, probably completely overstretched and kind of doing everything, including maybe office management, and maybe helping out the CEO with whatever, depending on the size. But typically have a marketing function. And my experience has been they are almost exclusively kind of brand focused, and kind of demand generation focused, creating content. But generally it's about outward stuff. How do we raise awareness of us as a business? You have a sales team. So a sales team are just focusing on how do we convert someone into a sale. And then once the candidate or the client has been converted, and you've made your placement, whether it's first placement or second placement, there's this whole period afterwards, which typically sits again with the sales team.
Yeah.
Now, as part of that, sorry, I'm going to jump in and out a bit here. It isn't just sales and marketing, right? It isn't just these people. There's also a training function.
Yeah.
And they're there to sharpen the tools of the sales team, typically. And then you probably have some sort of tech function, whether that is a person, a department, or whether that's your marketing team doing parts of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you break down, maybe I'm oversimplifying, but this is the way I think about it. If you break down that kind of sales structure from first becoming aware of you as a business through to you recommending you as a business to other people, so referring you, I'm not saying it's linear, but let's just say for the purposes of visualizing it, it is a linear series of steps.
Yeah.
And all those different steps have different people involved at that, right? So your marketing team were there to raise awareness. Then you have a technology team who are there to help the sales team connect to people, whether that's via LinkedIn or by a phone system or whatever. You have a training team who should be encouraging that sales team to convert that person from the phone to a meeting, from that meeting to a job, and so on and so forth. And then in theory, once that placement's been made, you should have a further training to keep that consultant engaged, keep that consultant reach out to the person at the right time. You might have some sort of tech enablement, which is sending alerts to that consultant. So it might be after 18 months or 2 years, checking on this candidate, or it might be automated. Or you might have a marketing team who are trying to again, keep that candidate or that client engaged with, social media post, email communication, text communication, at further events, wherever that is. Now, typically they're all siloed, but really this is all part of the same journey.
Yeah.
So the way I see my role, and again, it's not a complete replica of the CRO you see in a SaaS company. It's trying to align all these different departments together. So how do we align the marketing team with the sales team, with the training, with technology? Now, I'm not an expert in I'm more expertise in marketing, but I'm not an expertise in the rest. But it's just about alignment. All I do is super, super simple. It sounds really complex. It's just trying to align everything together.
Yeah.
So let's take something really simple, right? So most consultants, sales consultants, will be connecting with their clients or their candidates via a phone call, I imagine, for 90% of the time. So the way that someone like me or a marketing person can support with that, right, let's get all of our calls. Again, this is really, really quite simple, right? Get all of our calls over a day or a week and see what time those calls are being connected, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say typically you're going to see between 12 and 2 and probably between 5 and 6 is what we've seen in the last two businesses is when you get the most connections. And then you can then speak to your trading team or your managers and say, hey, why don't we try and align everything to these times? So I think we'll get a 10%, 20% uplift in connected calls. Now, you won't get a sales manager doing that because it's not in their thought process, thinking kind of that data-led approach.
Yeah.
You're not going to get training because the training are generally about sales conversions and how do we get better on the phone.
Yeah.
You're not going to get
What are we saying on the phone? How are we managing the conversation rather than when are we doing the conversation?
A marketing person not going to do that because they're focused generally on brand. Yeah. So I think there's a bit of a gap there with someone with a similar function to me who can put all these pieces together, where it doesn't kind of fit in anyone's particular silo, but it does generally impact revenue, which is ultimately what I'm there to do. So hopefully that's a kind of really small example.
So it's very much an optimization role. So
completely.
Even the acronym stands for a different optimization role as well, but there is an element of that, isn't there? It's just taking a step back and going, hang on a second, like we're doing all this stuff here and we're doing all this stuff here. We could arguably do less here and get better here. So it's really taking a step back and thinking. I think a lot of people I've worked with or I know that are in recruitment marketing jobs probably have that kind of brain because of what they've been experiencing with different silos within the silo of marketing. I think there's a lot of analytical people in those roles.
It's that data-led approach which you typically get with marketers, especially if you go into the kind of growth marketing area where it's much more about optimizing conversions. That's kind of where I've come from.
Yeah.
So I try to take the same ideas but apply it over a much broader sales funnel. So I like I said, I see my role as optimizing as much as I can, and the difficulty is what do you do first, what do you prioritize first, and again try and think what is the most impactful to kind of revenue, and then just keeping everything aligned together. Also, there's a strategic part as well, but that's my day-to-day kind of bread and butter, I would say.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think you've contextualized it really well to make it. I think you said you might be oversimplifying it. I don't think you did. I think you got it to the point where the majority of listeners will fully understand that. The thoughts going through my mind, the similarities in the way of my thinking and my current role. And one of the things you've managed to do that I didn't is I threw the towel in. I just got sick of seeing what you've just described and getting to the point where it's not a glass ceiling, a glass wall where marketing can't break through that silo because of the fact that outside of the marketing function, they still look inwardly at the marketing function. You're just the colouring in department. And I know we say that flippantly. How in your role, were the growth roles pivotal in you reaching where you are now? Because even just having the title of growth, did that make you get looked at differently within those businesses than having a marketing job title as such?
So the challenge with recruitment is that it is predominantly made up of small businesses. It's predominantly made up of the people who run most recruitment agencies, probably 4/5 have come from a sales background,
Yes.
where they were probably the top biller in their company, and they
Yeah.
want to go alone, which means that there's just going to be a big gap of their understanding of the world outside of sales.
Yeah.
Which is why it's quite rare to see a business really break over 50, 60, 80 people. Obviously, you get some,
Yeah.
but there's generally a bit of a ceiling because there's an awareness
Yeah.
gap in the humblest of my opinions. So one, that's something, if you want to stay in recruitment marketing, you want to stay in recruitment, you've got to be aware of that. And
Yeah.
that's just part of the challenge. Number two, you then got to adapt, I think, and kind of play on these issues. So I'm probably more outgoing than most recruitment marketers I've met. I can probably hold more of a conversation with a CEO. Again, that's not something I've always had. I've had to learn and adapt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was important for me whenever I've moved roles, I've kind of gone through a bit of a rebrand each time and repositioned myself. So the first time I moved from marketing manager into head of growth, I was very clear that this is a growth, and I pitched the growth concept, which at the time I didn't really fully understand, but it was a bit of a combination of technology, marketing, and sales as the way I saw it. And I pitched that to the CEO at the time.
Yeah,
and I was very clear that this was, I'm not coming in as a marketing person. And I said, right, when I get in, we're going to rebrand marketing into growth. So it's something called the growth department. Now, 3/4 of what I did was probably very similar to what the previous team was doing. However, there was a complete mindset change with the CEO and the mindset change with the rest of the business. And it probably took 3 months of everyone going, oh, you're growth, not marketing.
But you've got to be prepared to take that on the chin to prove the point.
But it was important because everyone then reset what they did, what they thought of me. And it meant that they came to me with a bit of a clearer or a fresher idea of what we could do together. And I was obviously always trying to put down new concepts and new ideas. And then that's kind of continued, really. And I've always been very clear that I'm not marketing. And I've been very clear from the off. Sometimes that's caused a few ripples in the first couple of weeks, but I think it's important to set the stall about who you are and what you're not. Again, otherwise, you're going to get lumped into their previous experience of marketing, which isn't always very positive, I've found.
I think a lot will have preconceived ideas.
Exactly,
They've got them preconceptions of, oh yeah, we used to have a marketing person. And it's like, well, actually you didn't. You used to have an office manager who you give the login for social media. So there's a self-fulfilling thing that marketers have had no say over. I think you've done a brave thing in rebrand marketing. Would you recommend that to other people as an approach? I mean, it's going to be really challenging depending on what the company looks like. But I also think what you said there, sometimes, this is harsh truth, you have to move jobs to enable that and find somewhere who would be receptive to maybe not necessarily changing the name of marketing, but finding a board or a hiring manager that isn't a marketer, that's a senior role and will be open to the ideas that you've suggested.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are challenges in recruitment for the reasons I said before. There are places where there's going to be a ceiling on where you can ever get to just because of preconceived ideas and preconceived conceptions. And a lot of marketers I found don't necessarily have the skill set to break through that and work to change minds. And you know, I think you need to have a lot of resilience and kind of have a bit of an end goal. So for me, I kind of chose a few years ago to stay in recruitment and not go into a product business like yourself, Kieron, where, you know, I thought it'd be a lot easier. You know, there's already a built-in, in theory, there's already of what marketing is and where you can get to. But with my long-term goal, I was like, well, if I stay here, I can probably rise a lot higher.
Yeah.
Because of there's very few people who have the same sort of soft skills that I do in terms of, you know, working with the sales team, I guess. So I could probably rise back. I could if I was in a SaaS company, for example, where there's just better people than me who have a much more technical marketing background, where those soft skills that I perhaps have aren't as important or are more not as important. Yeah. But it's difficult to change those those ideas in an existing business unless you have changed at the very top. So
Yeah.
if you're serious about trying to rebrand or go down a different route away from just doing social media and a couple of events here and there, and it's much easier to do that in a fresh company where you can go in from the very start and say, this is who I am, this is what I do. And, hold my hands up. I've been into businesses before where I've kind of pitched an idea, which is still an idea, hadn't really proven or tested it in any sort of real large way. But while the challenge of recruitment is that it's small business owners generally, the benefit of recruitment is that they typically want an edge. And they're entrepreneurs because they found an edge somewhere or they worked really hard.
Yeah.
But when you can pitch a new idea or new concept and sell the idea, this is brand new or this is exciting and no one does it, which is what I've done before because very few people have my role. In fact, I don't know anyone who has my role actually.
No.
At least from a marketing background. Obviously, some people have come from a sales background. That's quite exciting. So you do get a little bit of grace, and then obviously got to kind of prove that. But yeah, if people want to stay in recruitment marketing, you need to be extremely resilient and accept that it might be slow, but then very fast at the end.
Yeah, because you are, once you stack up, I don't know about you, but I'm well over a decade, obviously not in a recruitment marketing role as such anymore, but 10 years of that experience, you do get listened to. It feels like you never get listened to. And then all of a sudden you do get listened to because they look at a CV and go, oh, you've worked at this agency. Oh, I've heard of them. You know what you're talking about. That you're right. That doesn't come on a equal gradient. It's slow and then it's very fast. And the opportunities then, like you've shown, do open up. But you've got to be resilient. You've got to persevere. I think you've described something that I've heard described as entrepreneurial. So entrepreneurial is quite an obvious statement, but entrepreneurial is you're going to go and work in a business, but you're not going to be put in your box under your title and that be that. You're going to look at the business laterally and see how your skill set can influence it, whether that's jumping in meetings with training, whether it's like you described, should we price things a bit different? Why do we price it like that? A marketer, even though the 4Ps would lead you to believe that price is within their remit, that's going to be very rare that any marketer listening to this sits down with a board and talks about how do we price things.
I think that if you want to really progress in your career, you need to think like a CEO, and that's a very cliched statement, right? But I really do think it's true. You're really not employed as whether you're a marketing manager, head of marketing, marketing exec, marketing director. You're not really employed to get more Facebook likes. You're not really employed to do really good events. You're employed to make more money for that business.
Yeah.
And if you have certain skill sets which can help do that, and CEOs love to talk about this idea of value add, I think you should do that. And I don't think that you should be stuck in a box. This is what a marketing person does, which I've never done. And I think if like I said, if you do really want to progress in your career to a senior level, you can't just look at this is my job title.
Yeah.
I think you should think about what are the skills that I have, how can I help this business make more money? What can I do to do that? And that's the approach I've always taken.
And that has to start with what you've said earlier, that analytical ability to look at the now across the business. And actually, I'm quite good at X, designing, whatever that might be. Where could I put that skill set to best use? Is it something that's going to go on our intranet that only staff see? Or is it something that's going to go on social media that might generate more CVs? Well, I'm being told I need to do this project for the intranet, but actually I need to raise a flag here and say, I don't think that's the best use of my skills. That's a very crude example, but you've got to be able to do that for yourself in your job. See that, don't just do what's in your remit, do what's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I have that challenge every day where I've got to balance maybe what I've been suggested to do by someone on the board or an investor perhaps.
Yeah.
And I've got to then balance that against what I actually think will drive real impacts. But I've then typically got to then try and tie those things together because this person who I'm speaking to just doesn't have the understanding that I do about marketing or even, what I'm doing and, what isn't really marketing, but, some ideas and concepts I've got. And the only thing I've ever done that's really worked is by keep talking about it and trying to educate, and then going off on my own and doing small experiments and going back saying, listen, I've done this. The results have been this. The impact of the business will be this. I think we should invest in this and roll it out. And you're never, there might be a golden 10 companies, right, where there is extreme experience of marketing, growth marketing, and rev ops and whatever. But typically, it's not going to be that. So you've got to be patient that you might have to do small experiments and show it how it works and expand from there.
Yeah.
But again, it really is about resilience if you want to stay in recruitment marketing, because you're going to get lots of knockback and lots of go do this over here and go.
It's the right industry to learn from colleagues, though, because that's what they encounter day in, day out. And people talk about that a lot. So we can learn a lot from our colleagues doing recruitment as a day job, because they have to be resilient people. So I don't think we should be shy from that. We have to become, I think you said it yourself, you have to be good at marketing yourself, right? And selling yourself and showing internally that, oh, wow, this person knows something, that it's not just about Canva and it's not just about an ability to do a new logo or a new website.
Another thing which I know gets brought up from different podcasts I've listened to of yours and others is you need to, the same ways we try to understand our audience when we're packaging a product or building a brand, you need to do the same when you're pitching to your CEO or to your whoever you report into, whether ops director or sales director, whatever. You need to understand speak their language and understand what they're trying to achieve. What are their goals? And even though what really seems really important to you at the moment might not be important to them. It might be because it's not important, or it might be because you haven't explained it very well. But I've always taken a lot of accountability, and it's my job to try and convince this person and educate them as much as I can to why this is important and help them see it. Not just they don't get it, right, that's it, tools down.
Yeah, we can all learn, can't we? We can all be educated, and that's a challenge sometimes. If you see someone as a bit of a brick wall, sometimes you do have to look internally and think, are they a brick wall, or am I just not aligning my style to theirs, and taking time to understand what, like you said, what's their overriding driver for doing what they're doing. If you can align more of what your drivers are to theirs, then you're going to end up working on things you enjoy that get recognized, rewarded, versus working on stuff you really love but they don't care. Like that becomes quite deflating.
Well, exactly. But if you just take a slightly higher view of what you're there to do, and you're there to make money for that business, let's just say, which is really what every marketer is here to do, which is a very different way.
Yeah.
Your job is to try and get around that brick wall or climb over it or rebuild a new one. It's not just about going, right, I've stopped, that's it. It's how do I work with this person? How do I really understand what they're trying to achieve, what their goals are, what their pain points are? How can I help get them to do that? And I have I've got a mentor who was quite high at a couple of big companies from a sales perspective. And I said to him a few weeks ago, I was like, all I do in my job, all I do is just manage people. All I do is internally manage stakeholders. All I do is just talk to people and try and convince them. And it's like, I feel like I'm getting nowhere and it's really slow and whatever. And he said, listen, if you're going, if you want to get from here to here and you're going 10%, 20% of the way this week, that's great, because in a year's time, you'll see big change. So it's frustrating working in recruitment marketing, but just keep at it and keep building relationships. It really is. I can't say how important those relationship building is.
As marketers, we'd all implore, let's just make it really easy again. We'll all implore salespeople to be patient about nurturing a market. You're not going to get them the first time they see an ad or receive a phone call. We're all well versed in that. It's taking that same mentality, isn't it? And saying internally, I need to advertise this idea. I need to repeatedly advertise it, and then I need to build on any traction I've got. So apply the things we're all familiar with as though you're marketing to an audience, rather than just seeing it as a frustrating colleague who won't back your idea.
Yeah, and see sales as this, part of that journey, which you are part of that as well. There can be a little bit of a kind of inbuilt snobbery sometimes between marketers and sales, where marketers think they're super intelligent and sales are all just monkeys on the phones, and vice versa. And that's where things break down in my experience. You need to see them as you're all part of the same journey. You're all here to do the same thing. It's just you're just different parts of that. Yeah,
my career certainly improved after getting over that and stop. Whether I think snobbery, yes, and a little bit of fear as well. Like, I'm a bit more introverted. They tend to be extroverted. They're loud. I'm quiet. Which I know you've kind of challenged. Like, if if you get involved and you become a bit more like, well, we're colleagues, it's not siloed. Like silo's a funny one, in it, because marketers tend to go, it's all siloed, it's sales and marketing. But I always liken that to like being in traffic. You are traffic. You're causing the silo as much as
Yeah,
whinging
exactly.
about it. Want to come on to, like, obviously you've sort of, I think that's amazing what you said. I think people will just be like, right, I've got a slightly different slant on this and that. So I think you've added tons of value there. Um, just interested to know, like, what are you coming up? Is it roughly 6 months in the current role?
5 months, I think. Yeah, 5 6 months.
Five, 5 6 months. And are you currently building a team? How does that work? Because I want to try and get an insight into how building a team in more of a growth or a revenue role looks compared to that typical journey. So where are you at the minute with that, and what's the future plans, and how does it differ?
Yeah, so the plan is to build a team. Again, not just marketing, but also incorporating different
Yeah,
elements of it. Um, I haven't built a team of this size before, so maybe 10 people, 15 people. Um, so there'll be, I haven't quite worked out how to quite structure it, because I imagine that there'll be lots of things that I'll learn once I've done it. But
yeah,
I'm seeing there'll be a team which are much more brand focused,
yeah,
much more content focused. Again, I'm viewing it like a funnel. I don't know if that's the quite way to do it, but top of the funnel,
yeah,
demand generation. We'll probably outsource the kind of demand capture, which we're doing already. So PPC, which we have
yeah,
luckily have a budget from before, which I'm hoping to keep for next year. Um, we'll probably have a revenue ops function. So their role will be to look at the different stages of the kind of sales pipeline and try and tweak those mainly from a tech perspective.
yeah,
Training won't fall under me, but I will have a dotted line into it. I'm also working on it's a bit conceptual at the moment, but something around implanting into the recruitment teams and how I'll talk about it, but I haven't really fully fleshed it out yet. But again, the way I see things is that we're all different parts in the machine, right? The sales
yeah,
is one part of the machine, the marketing is one part of the machine, brands another part of the machine. Right, it's all working together, and my job is to kind of build that machine. So I don't see it as we're a sales organization with a marketing team plugged in. If that makes sense.
hmm,
Um, and I've always thought that if we think about how the world is going, where you have more artificial intelligence, you have more sales technology, you have more ease to reach clients and candidates. What's creating is much more noise and much more surface level content, which I'm sure you're seeing. I'm sure most people will kind of feel and see this.
yeah,
So my view, and I'm sure it's the view of a lot of people, is we need to kind of go back to basics, become more human, have more human connections. Part to doing that is two things. One is running more events, having more in physical events or digital events. And the other part is how do we become more of an expert? How do we get more expertise into what we do? So consultants typically have a relatively thin knowledge of their sector, depending on what it is. If you think tech,
yeah,
it's very, very deep and complex. You're never going to know really more than the top bit.
yeah,
So what I'm looking to do is, and we've always started this actually, is bringing in these subject matter experts who will pay on a retainer, and they will host events with us. They'll do podcasts with us. They will guide us with topics. We'll ghostwrite their ideas, their concepts. And then secondly, with doing more events, bring in an events person.
yeah,
So typically, a consultant will do all these kind of things. Marketing will say, right, we're going to do events, or we're going to do, we need to get some more thought leadership stuff. And the consultant's like, I've absolutely no idea. What I'm really good at is building relationships.
yeah,
So my view is get the consultant still building relationships. In a world of more tech, more AI, and more noise, it's more important for our consultants to building those human relationships. So let's get them away from mail shotting and chasing down job ad leads, for example, because we
yeah,
can use technology to do that for them, and we can
yeah,
centralize that from a central place. Let's get them building more relationships, going and meeting clients, going and meeting candidates, having those kind of calls and whatever. And at the same time, don't get them doing events. Don't get them organizing events.
no,
What they can do is they'll be the conduit. They'll maybe find some people who are good, but we'll use our subject matter experts to co-host and maybe pick the topics. We'll use the events person who can run with maybe a group of 6 or 7 consultants in a similar sort of area,
yeah,
organize the events. So I babbled a little there, but basically what I'm trying to say is there'll be a little team which almost will sit within a team. So imagine
Yeah.
like the middle of a wheel and the spokes, the consultants there and in the middle. So we're trying to centralize some of these more specialized skills. So running events, creating events, knowledge, in their particular industry. The chasing of job ad leads, for example. But there's so much stuff now which can be done by technology. So let's centralize that and allow the consultants more time to build those relationships. And we're going to test it out with one of our teams. So my company is a group of companies. We're going to test out one of those companies, one of those teams that the CEOs bought into this idea of the concept. And it might be that we have less consultants, right? But all those consultants are more profitable.
Yeah.
It also reduces the risk as a business because you're centralizing more revenue. It's not so reliant on individual people doing, which is one of the biggest challenges of recruitment, is it's so reliant on individual people.
Yeah, and I think that feeds into the point you made earlier about struggling to get past that certain headcount level. It's not scalable, is it? When an individual has so much power is the wrong word, but the company relies on an individual or several individuals. You can't clone them. What you can clone is processes that
Yeah.
anyone can do. And I think that's what you're suggesting. Focus on technology where it's not, yeah, the technology is a skill set, but it replaces manual exercises and things that anyone could do if trained appropriately. Whereas that individual relationship building, that's going to make the difference, isn't it?
My view, and listen, this has been challenged every year I've been alive, and since I've been in recruitment, is that I want to build or work with a recruitment agency to help them build an agency where the value of the agency is in the process, the system, the technology, the way everything fits together, the individual
Yeah,
parts, the recipe, right?
yeah,
Meaning that you can always go and buy, a consultant. You can always go and buy this and plug it in.
yeah,
And it's about there is a system, a process that's unique to you because you're plugging it in all sorts of different ways. My job is to optimize that so it's the best it can be,
yeah,
including the training. Because again, we're not robots. We've got to train consultants to work in a particular way. And that's what the value of an agency is. So it doesn't matter if people leave, people come and go. You can scale it up. You can drop it into different markets, different industries, because you have a process and system which works. So
yeah,
that's the way I see it. And again, I've had lots of CEOs. My current one, luckily, is bought into this idea. Who said that's rubbish. You always need consultants. I just view consultants as a way to execute on a particular part of the sales journey.
yeah.
And everything else can be done centrally or by other people, or done by technology, done by process. Whether that is a pie in the sky thinking, I'm not sure. But I don't believe that the way it works at the moment conceptually is fundamentally right.
It's
But
so far from optimal because
yeah,
we get consultants who the bit that they are a good consultant will always have strengths in areas that are the most meaningful thing for a
yeah,
recruiter, and it will be around relationships, it will be around negotiation, it will be around empowering a candidate,
yeah,
uh, strengthening a client's ability to get the best out of interviews. The like formatting CVs and call after call after call, that element of it to me is it's not a waste of their time, but it's not an optimal use of their time. So they're the bits of the process. I dare say they're the things that a recruiter hates doing as well, just given the typical characteristic. They want to be talking. So yeah, I don't think it's pie in the sky. I think it's that two things combined, how you've described your roles developed, being able to be somewhat visionary, but also couple that with an ability to sell your own ideas into people. You've got to have both sides of that. So I
yeah,
think it's pretty unique, and I think a lot of people, even if they just took a percentage of those two things that you said and started either marketing themselves better or being a bit more outward thinking in terms of building relationships with other directors or other managers in other teams. How does it work? Like this sounds archaic, but go and sit desk side or listen in on some calls and get a proper understanding.
yeah.
Um,
Go out for lunch with them. I mean, it
yeah,
depends on who they are, right? And if there's a huge age,
yeah,
you're 22, maybe a 40-year-old sales director's not going to want to go out for lunch with you. But again, my general experience has been that most people are there because they want to do a good job. They want to be proud of the work they're doing.
yeah, yeah,
And if they see you as someone who could help be part of that,
yeah.
they want to work with you. If you're showing, one of the things people always say about me is that I care. I very clearly want to have success, which is why I can get frustrated and probably throw my toys out of the pram and all that sort of stuff. But people care, and people like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, some small things, go out for lunch with them, go sit next to them, interview them, ask them, about their career. Whenever I go into a job, I go and speak to them. I sit down for an hour and a half. You can do that right now. Go, love to find out what's on your roadmap for the next, 12 months or 3 months. What's a real priority for you?
Yeah.
Who are your top?
Where are you struggling? And it's similar to what we discussed earlier, is if you find out where they're struggling, it might not necessarily be something you immediately look at and go, that's marketing. It might be something that you immediately look at and go, either myself or someone in my team has got a skill set that could help you with that. So you're struggling with this one thing that takes you ages every day.
Yeah.
We could automate that. It's not marketing, but we do marketing automation. It's not too dissimilar. We'll automate that for you.
But Kieron, what is marketing? What is marketing? Marketing is just a term which people use very loosely to a whole series of things. If you ask someone what marketing is, it means very, very different things, right?
Yes.
And it's down, we define what marketing is. We decide what marketing looks like, what it is. And if we think it should be something else, we can push against those boundaries.
Yeah, that's very true. This one always interests me. What tactic are you seeing a lot of recruitment marketers deploy on behalf of their agencies that you just look at and think, that's utterly pointless? I can't believe all of you guys are sinking time into this, getting your teams doing it. What's the one thing that you just think, give it up? Don't worry about offending people. We're all doing it in some way, shape, or form.
I think a lot of people default to social media as a bit of a default, and I think that a lot of that is down to being a comfort blanket because it's very visual. It's very, very feely. And I get this where I've had previous executives who've said, get stuff on LinkedIn, get stuff on that, and it doesn't really do anything because the audience isn't there. The reach is small. It's one in a million thing, which is completely relevant or not relevant. So I think that, and this kind of goes back to pushing back, doing what you think you need to do. Don't just default to post stuff on LinkedIn for the kind of sake of it because you feel you need to. I need to post every week or every 2 weeks. LinkedIn is just a channel of which there are many channels you can use to get your message across. LinkedIn's great, I think, for building brand, building awareness. It's often used a bit of a qualifier. So if you've got a client or a candidate, you might want to go check out your LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
But the amount of time I see companies sink into their corporate LinkedIn page and they really get anywhere, where, and again, people might disagree with this, but it's a much quicker route to market going through personal profiles, as an example.
Yeah.
Now, you don't own those people and you can always lose those people. But as long as you take a bit of a balanced approach, I think that's just my personal view anyway.
Yeah, so it's not dismiss social media. It's more be realistic about how much time, effort, budget is put into it. Because I think you're right. I think some of the cause of that is because it becomes the default.
Yes, it's the default.
It's the default of the rest. In other industries, you're probably looking at social media with a more balanced view, but it's a language our counterparts speak. Therefore, it's visible. Therefore, you do more of it.
Yeah, like I said, it's
a really good point.
Missing it. It's just people default to it, and they default to their corporate pages.
Yeah.
When, for example, our strategy at the moment is we're investing much more time in our people, in our individual profile, which gets much more reach, much more awareness, and then copying that on a corporate page, with a view that over time we'll start to funnel those people back into our corporate pages or via our LinkedIn or email newsletter or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
but be comfortable with that. You could put the same effort into people, and ironically, you would probably get the corporate pickup
exactly
of it. So that's a good point. And what on the flip side of it, what one thing are you seeing not enough recruitment marketers or recruitment agencies doing with their growth, their marketing, that you think there's an opportunity here that you're all overlooking because of previous bias or, again, defaults?
Yeah, again, a very simple one, right? And it's just the use of data and the corruption of data in a CRM, the way it gets treated. That could be an absolute goldmine.
Yeah.
So my previous business, we went through a 6-month program of getting everything cleaned up. I hate the word cleaned up, but getting everything correct, and then most importantly, putting in a system where this is how you input information going forward, because there's no
Yeah,
good thing you're
housekeeping
wrong,
job,
yeah.
and then yeah, don't let it happen
And
again,
then,
sort of
yeah,
approach.
exactly, yeah. So this is how these are the 10 fields which are non-negotiable. This is what the data means. This is how we're going to use it. And we would then, once data goes in, we had certain trigger points. So if a person had a certain criteria, it would trigger an email to them or trigger some sort of communication. We were getting 10 to 15 leads a month from this dead data, which no one was even using, previously. And it's just crazy. I understand why, because it's very, very complex, right? And when you're a recruitment agency, you're very, very sales focused about, right, what we do now, We've got LinkedIn, which is great. Yeah. But your database, and my aim is to get 20% of our revenue coming from our database in the next 5 years, which is for us is 20, 30, 40 million pounds. So there's loads of money, right, in your database.
Yeah. And why do we not put enough focus on making sure it's right, it's maintained? Yeah.
It just takes to hire one person, 20, 25 grand a year, and their job is to police, so to speak, make sure the process is being followed. And that's all it takes. Then you can hire a good RevOps person or a good email marketer or more automation marketer or whatever, can actually then take that data and do some really cool stuff with it and generate money for the business. So again,
the demand comes the wrong direction. The demand, because of noise from the executives, the board, is we need to do more automation. You hire a marketing automation person or email marketer, and then they go, "Well, what can I automate? Because it's all shit."
Yeah,
like it makes no sense, does it?
And the problem is that they've never typically an exec has never seen that generating money, so they've never understood why we should invest time into it. So it took a good 18 months in my previous business to get to that point, and a 6-month project to get all that data cleaned up, and most importantly, having a process put in where everyone follows. And we were like aggressively making sure, we're doing reports every week, saying, this person not filled this information in. But it took 6 months and we got there, and our data went from, so we had, 10 data points. These were our 10 things that are non-negotiable. Some things very simple, like, a name. Some things more complex, like, a coding or a coded location.
Yeah, they at least fit one sector that we operate in.
Yeah. And we went from 40% of correct records to 95% in 6 months. So it can be done. And people have said it can't be done. It's never going to change. It can get done. You just need get that buy and then real resilience to keep drilling it home for a period of time.
I like it. Yeah, it rings bells with me, the amount of bad databases we work with, and then the amount of joy you get when there's a good database in place and you get results from it. What advice would you give to recruitment marketing leaders, so thinking about marketing managers upwards, I guess, in terms of shifting the mindset in a recruitment agency about what marketing or growth, whichever way we want to phrase what we do as an occupation, what advice would you give about trying to shift the mindset if they are feeling a bit glass ceiling, bit brick wall? What's the number one thing they should be doing?
Yeah, so it's nothing that's short term, unfortunately. One is try and have some sort of hard data which can back up what you're doing. Now that is not always very easy because it's not always connected. Part of my role, for example, is connecting all this stuff together. So it might be that you can do some great marketing over here, but you never really know what really happens to that. The second one would be go off and run an experiment on something that don't tell anyone, go and do it, and then measure a result that goes back to revenue. Which could be as simple as, we're going to email let's go real simple. We're going to email all the clients or all the candidates we haven't spoken to in 12 months. Right. And we're going to say, hey, don't forget about us, or, how's everything going? Whatever that is, right? Maybe on that, make sure you speak to consultants actually to get them bought into the next.
There could be a few fights there.
Yeah. And then, track all responses. So here's a little tactical thing we did. So we did it through Bullhorn Automation, which actually most people will have used or a version of. Don't make them try and click a link to say, we're looking. Just get them to respond to the consultant. And what we did is every time they responded to us via a particular subject field in an email, it got forwarded to one of our team. So I made a little mark, a little note, a little tag on that profile. So over time, we can see actually what happens to those people.
Yeah.
So you can see how many interviews that happens from that conversation you start, hopefully how many placements or how many jobs you get if it's to clients. And then go back to your sales director, your market, your whoever it is. Go, right, I ran this experiment for 3 months. We did this, and it generated 10 interviews, 20 meeting, whatever, right?
Focus on results that resonate with them.
And the important thing is about resonating. It's got to be resonating to them. It's got to be revenue focused. Otherwise, it becomes just another marketing metric. You've got to speak their language.
Yeah.
And the kind of third thing I would do is try and spend more time with those key decision makers, understand what their goals are, what they're trying to do. If you go out for drinks in an evening, go and chat to them, tell them about what you're doing. Try and find little small wins you can do for them, even if it doesn't really impact you. What's something which is really bothering them, which you can then go and fix for them. Whenever I go into a company, the first 6 months, I spend 6 months, one, doing the kind of visionary stuff, getting everyone bought into the idea of a concept. Secondly, it'd be trying to, how can I quickly generate revenue or show that what I'm doing is impacting money. But third, it's trying to find the key stakeholders, the key people, and giving them these small wins. Even if it's something really simple, which has absolutely no impact to me, no impact to the
formula in a spreadsheet, like you just know how to do that formula.
It can be that simple, yeah. But what it does, it gets them bought into you as someone who's helping them, someone who's there to solve their problems. And
when you then go to ask for their help or their support on something, there's reciprocity there, isn't there?
Yeah, and I can't tell you how important that is to when there's a board meeting you're not part of and they're discussing an idea that you've put forward. Someone goes, I actually really like, Jenny or Michael or whatever.
Yeah, because helped me out a few times, and I think they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, like recruitment is very, very relationship based, which is very good and very bad. But if you can get people on side, you can really, really succeed. So,
yeah. All right, last few questions, quick fire rounds. We'll finish off with this one. So, thinking about this across your life, so it could be work related, maybe not be, but piece of technology you could not live without.
So I'll give two, if that's all right.
Fine,
One is Zapier.
Okay.
Zapier. Again, I guess part of my role is about connecting things together. Zapier allows me, for those who don't know it, it's basically allows you to connect lots of different apps together without having to code or what have you. It just allows me to do so many more things. So, like for example, we're running a campaign at the moment, a paid ad campaign based on various different keywords. So they come into our Google Ads account and they go straight into our bullhorn, which we can then track, which we can't do without unless you're a developer.
Yeah.
The second bit of tech, very, very low tech, is I've got a mechanical dog feeder, right? So you've got a dog, right? So one of the things, right, is when you've got to bend down every day and get your bowl in, get your food down, you get all over your hand, and it's just annoying, isn't it, to bend down, whatever, right? You've got these big bags. Do you agree with that problem so far?
Yeah, I've done it this morning. I've looked and I've seen his food needs, and it's just a daily habit. Let him out, see if he needs food, and then do the same again this afternoon when he's probably chewed through it. So I share that pain.
So I bought this. It's like it looks like a bin. It's like a freestanding thing, and it's got a lever on the top. Right, you just pull it, and the bowl comes out the bottom, and it fills up, and then you close it, and the bowl goes back in, and that is revolutionary, honestly. Is
your dog a dog that would just eat whatever's there, or is it a bit of a mine's a bit of a grazer, so I'll put the food out. Some mornings he'll wolf it down, but that still sounds easier than what I'm doing, so that'll be the next step to run on Amazon.
Every morning bedding down, having to get my hand in all the dog food, So
no, I like it, and it's unique. No one's ever said that before.
There you go.
What's your favorite brand?
Recruitment brand?
No, any brand, just a brand that really resonates, you have an affinity to, you would always choose them over an alternative.
It's a really lame one, but I quite like Apple. I'm fully bought into the Apple ecosystem. Everything about is Apple.
Share that.
But that's quite lame.
No, I think it is what it is. I'm with you on that. I've tried in the past. I tried to be different, and Android just pissed me off quickly. And the fact that nothing else, everything, your different devices were problematic. So I'm with you on that one. And on the flip side, least favorite brand. What branding just grates with you?
Brewdog, only because I think they
2 in 2 days. 2 in 2 days. Owen, who I interviewed
I drink
yesterday.
BrewDog. I like BrewDog.
Yeah,
They went down like this super ethical punk.
yeah,
We're different. We're so nice. We're so cool. And then everything that's come out of the past couple of years, I just thought you're the same as everyone else, aren't you? But you're just masquerading as something.
yeah. Even with that opinion, I've still drunk a few of them after it. But yeah, I know what you mean. I don't like it. If there's an alternative, I'll go for it. But sometimes it's just like the cricket club my son plays for. The cans of beer tend to be BrewDog, so I grab one of them.
It's just that clash between the perception and the reality, or at least that perception now is that they're not who they say they are, and that's what's frustrating, isn't it? It's that disconnect.
Yeah. And finally, what's your favourite swear word? What do you get the most function out of when you're pissed off? Or
I was going to say the C word, but I thought that might not be appropriate for
when I got interviewed on this podcast many moons ago, and that's the one I went for. Regretted it afterwards because I don't hear me say that now.
Yeah. So I now use the word wanker quite a lot because it feels a bit old school, a bit classic.
It's very British as well.
Well, about to say I've got loads of friends who are American now or based internationally, so it feels quite like British. Put my flag down.
Feel proud. Proud to call someone a wanker.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. On that note, Chris, I'm going to stop the recording, mate. Honestly, like a lot of these podcasts are good. You speak to interesting people, but that's been so enlightening. I think everyone in TLM will take a load of value. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the Lonely Marketers podcast. If you would like to join like-minded recruitment marketers in our WhatsApp group, visit the LinkedIn page and scan the QR code in the banner. This podcast is created by the team at Pager. For more information about how Pager can help build personal brands for your recruiters and scale your content distribution efforts, visit pager.co. PAIGER.co. You can find me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect for more content about recruitment marketing.